I'd wish you'd express it. But again, that just goes back to how I communicate versus how you communicate.
Okay. Yeah, I was a bit upset last night.
She was upset?
Yeah.
About what?
Hey guys, welcome to Little Black Book 91. Listen, it's going to be interesting, okay? Because I'm going to give you an opinion, which I don't feel like many people are going to like. But I'm going to be very honest with you. Both Javen and Katisha are villains. Both villains. I'm sorry to say it. They're both villains. You ain't going to like it. You ain't going to have to accept it. But I'm going to tell you the truth. They are both villains in this particular season. Yes, I know Javen played Katisha off the court and, you know, did what he did. I mean, he didn't necessarily cheat, but he cheated emotionally. Let's say that, for instance, right? And then and Katisha didn't necessarily cheat on Javen, but let's not pretend as if she didn't drag Damola over the line. Now, she can talk about how, oh, it was so close right into the end. It wasn't. It never was close. And I keep saying this, like, this is what actually happens a lot of times in relationships. And I don't want anyone to get away with it. Javen is very obvious, and I'm going to break him down. And I'm going to break down Katisha as well. They're both villains. That's why they found each other. And sometimes you need to admit to yourself that the reason why your relationships go the way they go is because you're a villain. And you think you're an innocent party. You are a villain. Some of you need to look at yourselves, look at your dating pattern, look at your dating history. You're not a victim a lot of times. A lot of times you're not a victim. You play victim, but a lot of times you are a villain because you see somebody and your trauma and your patterns, you choose people that are not on your level. I've been saying this all season long. Okay? All right? All season long. And I'm going to explain to you why I believe that both these people are villains. Now, we can say one is bigger than the other. I won't complain if you say one's bigger than the other. But both of these people are villains in this situation. I do not want you to separate the two and be like, oh my God, it's only Javen. No, you need to open your eyes. If you don't, you won't see the bigger picture. All right. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys are liking, you're sharing, you're subscribing, you're clicking on that wonderful bell button for the notifications of the uploads. Let me just first explain this, why I believe that both of them are actually villains and how this actually affects people in relationships quite a bit. On this channel, we speak a lot about attachment styles, and I've labeled both of these people as potentially being fearful avoidant versus the dismissive avoidant, right? And I think a lot of these TV shows actually have the same dynamic. For instance, we kind of see, and I think actually no, technically we saw Sandy and JR would be dismissive avoidant versus fearful avoidant, but Sandy and her original man, Dave, was actually probably fearful avoidant versus fearful avoidant. We also saw, quote unquote, it could have been DA or FA with the American one, the ultimatum with the, I can't remember the other black couple, and I always forget their names. Y'all know who I'm talking about. There's another black couple there, not Katisha. I'm thinking there's another black couple. But a lot of times we see on these shows, right? They choose people with these attachment styles because they're more likely to be running away from it. They're more likely to be scared of abandonment, scared of rejection, and scared of betrayal. And when people exist in the plane of fear, they make really bad choices. Okay, they make patterned choices that are based on the trauma of fear. And then when you encompass that with drink and alcohol, you're then going to end up with a very distorted kind of story, which then ends up being not your best plan. Okay, so let's break down Katisha and Javen right here, because in this scenario, I want to point out something. Did anybody clock? And if you're with me on anything, you'll clock it. That Katisha still didn't tell Javen the whole story until later on in the episodes. Like, did anybody clock that she was struggling to tell Javen that what actually happened between her and Damola? You know why? Because she lied to Damola. And she played him. So she couldn't go and tell Javen because she was afraid of losing Javen. It wasn't only until later on when he pressed her, and now Javen doing something very interesting also. He presses you and then goes, oh, I you know, you don't have to tell me. No, Javen, you want to know, so stop saying you don't want it. Javen is very much a dismissive avoidant. Like, he will say like, oh, it doesn't mean anything. It absolutely means everything. And what we saw with Javen on this series between episode 1 to 8 is him emotionally drifting from Katisha. Like, he emotionally drifted, and then it becomes cold. It looks callous. It looks narcissistic, even though I don't believe he's a narcissist. It looks like that because he's emotionally drifted. But the reality of the situation also is Katisha never told the full truth. If she did, we wouldn't be here. Right? Now, her inability to tell him the truth about what she really said to Damola only happened, I think, what, episode 6 or 7? And then he realized, he was like, wait, hold a minute. So that's the full truth between you and Demola. And that's why the end scene is really interesting. Now, I want to pinpoint something. I'm going to go back to this clip. Demola is somebody who's passive aggressive, just like she is. They communicate in a very passive aggressive means. Hers is even more passive, meaning they don't tell the full truth about how they feel. They kind of make you feel it. Okay, they kind of make you feel it. And that's the problem with this scenario, is that both parties are actually passive aggressive and they don't actually communicate what they actually want to say. So let's just look at this clip here. Look at this really one.
Again, that just goes back to how I communicate versus how you communicate.
Okay.
Again, that just goes back to how I communicate versus how you communicate.
Now, pause it on this part, right? What was the context of this particular scene? The context of the scene was she said she was feeling sad, okay, all right, before he went out the night before. Do you think he didn't know? He absolutely knew she was sad, but he gonna be passive aggressive. He ignored her sadness, did not pick up on the hints, and she also did not tell him that she was upset. But we could all see she was upset. She was sitting at the table, moping at the table because he had been talking to Sophie and everything all night. And she wasn't just tired, she was upset. But then what does she do? Passively, instead of her actually saying she was upset, what does she do? She got up, she went, she kissed him and said, I'm going to go to bed. Are you not pissed off? Because if you are, let me know. Why did she not let him know? Because she's also passive aggressive. Okay, they're both passive aggressive people here. This is how your relationship will look like when you are passive aggressive, and then you'll blame the other party saying, how did you not see it? They saw it, they don't care, right? Until you say it, right, it doesn't become real for a lot of people. And this is what happens when you are using an attachment, when you exist in an attachment style and you're readily in a place where you communicate passively rather than assertively. Being able to be assertive means I'm able to tell you how I actually feel without necessarily concerning myself with how you feel. Like, in the sense of what I mean by that is not to say I don't really care about how you feel, but I'm able to say how I feel irrespective of how you feel. And I can say it in a way that's not trying to be demeaning or breaking you up or hurting you. I understand that it may be painful, but I still need to tell you because that's my truth and my needs. Okay. All right. So in that moment, he didn't care. Here's why he didn't care, because that clip, this is why he didn't care. Because of what?
Patrick. Yeah, everyone was there, except on the couple side. It was only me, Kieran, and Megan.
Oh.
So yeah, it was cool.
Do you think that you could see that I was upset before you left?
Not really.
Now he lying. Do you think you could have seen that I was upset? Of course he can. Of course he saw. Of course he did. But there are two peas in a pod. He was upset and she was upset. And instead of him telling her that he's upset, he went out. And instead of her telling him that she's upset, he cried in her bed. And now this is how relationships end up getting to a place where we're like, I don't even know him anymore. I don't even know her anymore. I don't know why we're drifting. We don't talk like we used to. Well, if you're not going to share how you feel. If you're not going to share how you feel, bro, this is what's going to end up happening. Okay? So in this space, we see how both characters in this space are playing their role. Right? So now we're waking up in the morning. She's saying, you know, did you not see I was upset? Rather than saying I was actually upset last night. I may not have shared with you because and here's the thing. And many of us do this, right? You get upset. Okay. You get upset and then you expect your partner to read that you're upset rather than just saying it. This is not how you're supposed to communicate. I want to say it one more time. When you deal with your partner, nobody is a mind reader. This goes for both of them, by the way, because he's also upset. He just hasn't said it. Okay. He just hasn't said it. The reality of the situation is they were both upset. And so what he did is, instead of doing that passive aggressively, he took himself to the club and he knew she was upset and he knew she didn't want to go out. So he used that as an opportunity and went out. She was upset. And instead of crying in her bed, she should have been honest, not kissing him on the lips, and then going to bed and crying about it because you want the person to see. Just tell the person, I'm upset. I can't lie. How the night has gone. Dega. You're not upset about him just going out. You're upset. Who's that? Javen? Hold on. Let me see. That's the real Javen. Let me see. Let me see. Hold on now. Let me see if that's Javen so we can get a bit if it's him. Let me see. Javen, if that's the real you. If that's the real you, by all means, click on the thing. Let's get a conversation going. Because you know me, I don't mind having a real because we've got to ask some questions. Javen said he's outside. Oh, wait till you're inside then. You don't have to rush it. You don't have to rush it if you're not. Don't worry, we're gonna be here for an hour or two, so you don't have to rush it. If you're outside, you don't have to rush it, bro. We can wait till you're inside, bro. We don't mind if you don't worry, don't have to rush that thing. What I'm saying about these two is though, what I'm saying about these two is that because they're passive aggressive, neither of them are getting their needs met. So let me go to another scene to kind of show you what I mean by this, right? Because and I want to go to an origin point as well, okay? Because this conversation here with the mullah was also interesting, but that's not the origin point I'm actually looking for. I'm looking for that night, isn't it? Yeah, okay, that night. Okay, let's go to the night that they were talking in the bed, because in the home, sorry, because we all saw that she was upset. You ain't got to be, you know, a thingy to see that the person was upset. You know what I mean? Like, we all know. Okay, I see. I think it is Javen behind the scenes. Okay, Javen, give me a minute then. Give me a minute. I see it's you, bro. So give me a minute. Let me just break this down real quick. I see it's you, sir. Okay, give me a minute.
I'm gonna go bed. Very tired. Night.
All right. So as I was saying quickly before it's Javen, so I'm gonna get him on. Look, as I was saying about the situation, is this: he can see she's upset. No, he can't pretend he didn't know. He know. As a men, we know. We can see that she's upset. She's down. She looks sad. She looks tired. Whatever. She's upset, right? But she also, like I said, in that scene, rather than telling him right then before she kissed him that I'm actually upset about the situation, can we talk, or can we talk in the morning? Don't do that. She's also so this is what happens when two passive aggressive people meet in a relationship. You know what I'm saying to you? Now, I personally think the origin point of when I said this earlier on in my lives, that the origin point is going to be that decision that she took with the mullah and Javen is going to be an issue. Because if you don't discuss what actually ended up happening, right, and you drag it on, it looks like you're being dishonest. The key thing here, you know, I think, if I'm really honest with you, I think this was a good interview. I liked it because, like I said, I think for me personally, I get to watch people and see how they behave and see how they answer questions. And if you followed me long enough, you know that my thing sometimes, you know, is to look at behavior, and I want to be able to assess and see where the behavior is going to. I think listening to Javen, I think one of the things I noticed is the dance that he does, right? And you have to be honest with you. The dance that he does is very clever, because actually what it does is you can't necessarily hold him accountable all the way. And that's why I wanted him to just hear me out and to say, listen, bro, I hear what you're saying, but I want you to understand being accountable is your go-to. It just allows everyone else to empathize with you going forward. I think what we have to look at also too is that the wording is very clever, right? And that's where I know he may not like what Kieran said about semantics, but in this instance, there was semantics that was played with a little bit here on the edge, right? So, for instance, if I'm asking you, did you have a conversation that was inappropriate? If you say the girls had a conversation that was inappropriate, it's still been inappropriate conversation. But what you're saying is it's not me, you know? And I totally understand that, you know? I understand that perspective, and I can understand why you may not want to take all the accountability. And I think if we have another interview, I would definitely do more background digging in terms of questions, so we can understand where it's coming from. Because one thing I always want to interview people is to get an understanding of why you're doing what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Because we can all do an interview, and you guys would probably even be a better interview than I would be if you were to ask all the questions you want to ask about the show. But I want to understand where it's coming from. I want to know why he is that particular way. So when we get part 2 going, I definitely want to go back to my old process of just being able to ask questions about the background, because we need to understand where this thought process is coming from. We need to understand and from why there is that dance that happens when there's a question asked about your behavior, why there is, you know, there is a aspect where you're like, oh, you know, it's them, but it's not necessarily me. Why is there a distancing from that in that particular aspect as well? You know, I think in that particular experience as well, I think listening to the you know, I think the situation that happened with Javen and Katisha, I think there were deeper aspects to this, man. as he said, like there was questions that he was asking her, but she, you know, maybe at times she was withholding the information, and he may not have gone all the way to explain it. So I want to really explain it, because that's what I was talking about on the live. When you're somebody who's an avoidant, and there is two types of avoidance, by the way, there is the dismissive avoidant and there's a fearful avoidant. When you're those two type of avoidance, what tends to happen is trust is a major thing. Boundaries are a major thing. It's why I asked him, how did you feel about the situation with Javen, with Demola, when you got told that she actually promised him? Because at that point, your trust is that, okay, she said something, but I'm not sure what she said. Okay, now I know that she promised him. You know what I'm saying, Chu? Now I should know that he promised him. Oh, okay, that's different. Now, and bear in mind, obviously, you've been asking her several times, what did she say? Now it looks like a lie, even though it's not necessarily is, but now it looks like a lie. So now the trust that you're going to have for her is going to change. I honestly think, and I know he didn't necessarily explain it that way, I honestly think that particular situation where he went out, of course, he begged her to come out and everything as well, with Sophie, Anu and Yolanda, whilst he may not have quote unquote said anything that was out of the extraordinary, or quote unquote whatever, he said something that was flirtatious, he definitely may have been and I say may have been a recipient of conversation which was not appropriate. And at that point, although he did say he said that if Katisha was there, she might have an issue with what the girls are saying. At that point, okay, all right, at that point, we have to look at it from this perspective. At that point, we have to go, okay, so then what would be the reason for you to flirt or let them flirt with you, Anu and Sophie? And I think the reason why that's important is because I think at the point you had emotion, I do think you've emotionally distanced yourself. Okay, and I think that's also a key factor, is that the reason why someone can stay in a conversation like that, and I know I've been there myself, is that there's an ego, but there's also a wound. With people that are dismissive avoidance, one of the biggest things is trust and consistency. And for fearful avoidance, one of the biggest things is trust and consistency. And then the wound, the fear of any dismissive avoidant is rejection, right? So her choosing Demola and promising him, he may not say it, but I'm going to tell you from a theory perspective, her choosing Demola and then telling you after a few later on that she actually chose him and was that's who she chose. She was going to go, and she changed her mind last minute. It will F with you. And it will make you think, does this person really want me? Do they really want me? Do they actually care about me? It makes you question now everything before this point, which you're already questioning because she told you in the pods that she was going that way anyway. But now to hear that she actually was going to, that she actually in that space, promised Demola, this will cause you to spiral a little bit, right? Now, I'm not giving him a pass. I want you to understand, if you're just joining here and you're thinking we're giving a pass, no, we explain behavior. I want to make sure that, because there's a lot of new people here who don't usually watch my content, and I've jumped in because Javen was here earlier on. We explain behavior here. It's not about trying to give people a pass. If you're new here, I need you to understand, we explain behavior here. This is not about us trying to demonize anybody. It's about explaining behavior. So I think that was also, but I also understand where Katisha's coming from, right? Because Katisha feels like she made a mistake, right? She was and my thing is, just like he was playing, she played a little bit, right? Because from my perspective, and I've said it to my audience already, at the time of watching it, Katisha thought like when she was going through it, I think she always wanted to go with Javen in the end. I think Demola was nice, but as she said on the show later on in the episode, what she said was actually what she witnessed was Demola was very sure about her. Okay, Demola was very sure about her, but she wasn't sure about Demola. She was sure about Javen, but see, we heard later on that Javen is not very sure about her. It's the same pattern. When you have that attachment wound, you tend to catch on to people. Okay, you tend to catch on to people who are going to further exasperate that wound if you don't heal it. right? So Demola actually saying that he was sure about her, she wasn't sure about him because she was trying to figure out her feelings and her thoughts. And actually because she's used to dealing with toxic men who she's chasing. And to find somebody who's chasing her, that was very difficult for her. And then to find Javen is not chasing necessarily. He's accepting of whatever you choose. Okay, if you don't be me, that don't be me. And then she ends up choosing him. And so now we're in that situation, right? Where two people have an insecurity. So they are two peas in a pod, because as much as Javen is a deflector, she's also not able to, she's also withholding information. These are two peas in a pod. This is why I keep telling you about the same, that if you don't pay attention to these shows and start realizing why your dating life is going the way it's going, and you don't start seeing yourself in these characters, you start to miss where you can actually learn. Because there are many people that are like Katisha, and there are many men who are like Javen. Okay? There are many women like Katisha and many men like Javen. Now, do I agree with him in terms of her, him saying obviously that, you know, she should propose? Well, I think that really opens up to us what that meant. If he comes and, as he said to us, he meant what he said, like he wanted Katisha to propose to him. What does that mean? Why would he want, okay, why would he want her to propose to him? Well, here's the underlying, I think, of this situation as well, okay? The underlying aspect of it is that, again, that's why I asked him about trust, because I don't think he fully trusted her. Because if I fully trust you, then why would I not take up the mantle again and just propose? Because he needs to see if she changed. He needs to see that, okay, you change your mind, but you actually want me. Because the key word here is desire. Okay, desire. So when you're not sure about how someone desires you, right, you end up having, especially when you've got an insecure attachment, you end up trying to find ways, passively, aggressively, once more, testing if you need to try and make sure you can see where that person's intentions and desires lie. That's why he can say, I want you to propose to me. Why would you need to say that? Why don't you just say, I'll propose to you? And he even came on a podcast to even say it again. I said, hey, so that means that for him, there was, and that's why I said about, and that's why I said that there's a trust issue. Okay, there's a trust issue. Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Teresa. Good point. Good point. Shout out for those who gave the. I did ask your questions. Those of you who sent a thingy in. Thank you very much. I did ask your questions earlier on. So thank you very much to Chris. I asked your question. Ari, I asked your question as well. Thank you very much. Natural Gabby, thank you very much. And Monica, thank you very much as well. I appreciate it. Okay. So this is really important, right? In this aspect. So yeah, so what I was saying, back to what I was saying. So needing Katisha to speak to him and say, I want to propose to you, would absolutely go along with what Teresa said. It would erase the rejection. So now he has to find a very passive, aggressive means of trying to find an answer for the rejection. Well, if you truly mean that you actually want me, I can't guarantee to trust you. So I need some type of test to prove that this is what you truly mean. Because I can't take your word for it. I've just seen what you've done. This is actually how avoidants move. Okay? A lot of times how avoidants move. Okay? So in that space, then you fast forward, you come into outside the pods, you guys are trying to make the relationship in that space, okay? And in that place, I'm sure that was running through his mind. Because no matter how much he might have thought he, quote unquote, won with against Demola, that's gonna play in your mind. You know what I'm saying? She's gonna play in your mind. And then we get the relationship going to a place where we see the information spilling out more and more, little by little, right? Because Katisha didn't feel safe enough to do so. And that doesn't have to always be the other person. It can be the fact that Katisha doesn't feel emotionally safe with herself. And so she was afraid of losing someone. So rather than being honest, she withheld certain information. And then she's also delaying her processing in terms of what she's feeling. And it's interesting because when I did say the delay, he kind of almost, not in a bad way, kind of course corrected me a little bit. Like to almost say, you know, it's not necessarily just delay reaction, which also told me a little bit more information, because me explaining that she had a delay reaction and him not necessarily all the way not all the way accepting that told me that you didn't see it as a delay reaction. You may have seen, and that's what I'm saying about people that are avoidant on both sides, both Katisha and him, is that you start to see their behavior as on purpose. That's, you start to project that their behavior is intentionally trying to hurt you. And you need to do that from a survival perspective, because that's what your attachment craves, right? That's what your attachment craves. Hence why this aspect of Sophie, Anu, Yolanda, as much as what, you know, it may have not been crazy, he did enough. He didn't go too far. Why didn't he end up kissing one of these girls? You know, why didn't he go extra crazy with it? You know? So it's like, in that space, I see where he was dancing on the edge, teetering. It's very clever. You know what I mean? Yeah, he might have done it. Maybe kiss Sophie in a closed booth. Maybe he did. Maybe she'll come out and admit it. Maybe she won't. You know what I mean? Maybe he did. And so yeah, I think there's a lot to break down with these two. You know what I mean? There's a lot to break down with these two. And I just don't want anyone to miss some of the key components that you can garnish from this scenario and situation as well. There's a lot to take from it, if I'm honest with you, from that interview. And I definitely will go and watch the interview again and tap into a little bit more deeper, because I think there's a lot more aspects in that. The flirting was the ego boost. Yeah, the flirting is a validational aspect, right? Because the wound is not feeling accepted. So when you get rejected, you feel dejected, right? You can feel like you're not accepted for who you are, right? And so when you're putting your best foot forward, you're saying, accept me. When you get rejected, it's actually a rejection. It can feel like a rejection of you. So in that space, going after other women and not necessarily going all the way, it's also a way of making yourself feel better. It's like, oh, I'm still wanted. I'm still liked. I'm still you know, needed by by women, right? And really and truly, that comes back to the wound that the person is carrying. Okay, that goes back to the wound the person's carrying. You know, in that space. So yes, those ladies were actually his pawn. They might have thought that they were getting him, but actually that was his pawn. And actually, if you look at it really and truly, if you really deep it, by the way, if you really deep it, Sophie has the same wound. Sophie has the same wound. That's why she was able to flirt with Javen in such a way. She couldn't, the fact that she saw Kieran and Megan getting on so nicely, the fact that she had to say something about say something about Kieran and his jacket, instead of just saying, oh, it's a nice jacket, she couldn't. She had to say something that was demeaning towards Kieran. And then Megan was like, hold on now, it's my man's. I likes his coats. Now she felt rejected. So instead of her being respectful, she knows that Javen is with Katisha. Why does she have to go over there and tell him that if I sat down, my VJJ would be out? What's going on? Why are you saying that? Well, because you have an issue too with rejection. And we saw that how she dealt with Kieran in the pods. Now, Sophie might come out and tell us a different story, because she also may have felt like, well, I got played by Kieran. The fact of the matter is, this is why I said that that everyone needs to be accountable, including Javen, is because when you take hold of your narrative, it's by taking hold of your behaviors. And so in that space, we see that with Sophie, there was no need for her to tell Javen that if I sit down, my VJJ is going to be out. All she had to say was, hey, look, you know what? I think my clothing is not very appropriate. That's it. And then when it got to a certain point, she was even acknowledging, hey, we might even get in trouble. We've been talking for too long. She knows. She knows, because she had been trying to antagonize Megan for the longest. And then she had the audacity to say that, you know what, at least Barda and Katisha had pretty men, good-looking men. Wait, hold on a minute. So now Kieran's not good looking. Oh, because he rejected you. So you don't think it's good looking anymore. And you were over it since then. Oh, okay. So, okay. I hear you. So we see what Sophie does when she also feels rejected. And this is what happens. People who have the same wound tend to link up. This is what I'm saying. You need to pay attention for you. Because if you can get, as we can all get annoyed at seeing them do what they do. I don't like what they're doing. But if you find that you've got the same behaviors, you need to check you and say, hey, I need to look at me as well. Maybe there's some behaviors that I'm exhibiting that are very similar. Right? Very, very, I got to be very careful of that. We see the same thing with Anu. Right? Anu came on, okay, and she started flirting with Javen. Hold on, babe, what you talking about? You know, and I know it was very on the line with Anu because it was more like, you know, we should have dated more, but you know what I mean? It was very borderline. But we see Anu and how she deals with rejection. Because when it came to her and Patrick, one, I don't think Patrick's the most amazing person, you know, out there or whatever. And again, he's not a perfect man, not saying that at all. But all I'm saying to you is, literally in that situation, okay, literally the single people in that situation, Anu then went after Patrick. Then started insulting he's wearing what was it? He was wearing a little do-rag or whatever was wearing on his head and insulted that. Then she started singing and saying, you're a liar, because she felt betrayed, which is one of her, probably, I think she's a fearful avoidant, which is one of the worst fears. She felt betrayed in that moment. And so actually then went after Patrick. It should have been a simple case of, hey, Patrick, can I tell you how I feel? You know, I did feel a bit betrayed. I did feel these kind of things, and then lay it on the line. But instead, she wanted to attack him because she felt like he had robbed her of an experience. But there was no robbing here. There's no robbing here. Right? Now, if you wanted him to communicate with you afterwards, I understand, but you don't have the right for him to communicate with you. So if he said he don't want to be with you anymore, and he's told you that in the pods, he didn't drag you for it, he didn't put you onto the neck, he didn't stay with you and then promise to marry you and then go on. He actually stopped you before then. At that point, sis, you guys are not even spiritually compatible, and that's the same thing you started mocking him for. You started mocking him because now, you said that was it, she called it something else, but she was insulting a splenic situation. And I'm like, wait, Annie, why? Why? And before then, it even started before then, because when she came into the room, everybody was in a circle and she hugged everybody, and then she bypassed Patrick. Oh. Damn. At that point, I knew, okay, we're not going to get the right response. So again, why am I saying this? Why am I specifically pointing out Anu, Sophie, Javen, Katisha? Well, because of course they're the main people, okay, as well. And if anybody has Anu, we'd love to get Anu on here as well and have a conversation as well, okay? But with Anu's situation, and again, I'm not blaming her. It's we'll just explain the behavior. Those three were interacting, and it's not by chance or default that it was Anu, it was Sophie, and it was Javen. It's not by default. It's not by mistake. It's by design. Because people that carry the same energy tend to find each other. So when you look at your dating life, and this is something for you and for me, when you look at your dating life and you start to see the pattern, and your conclusion is that men are trash, you start looking at yourself. Don't look at the men. Look at you. And when you're a man and you start looking at your patterns and you start seeing the ladies have done this to you and it doesn't seem to work out, stop looking at the ladies and look at yourself. Stop looking outwardly for the answer and start looking within. There is something that you're not looking within yourself to understand why you're having the same pattern. You are the common denominator in your relationships, and the ending or the beginning or the middle or whatever you have in those relationships. And until you're willing to start doing some reflections, you will always deflect onto other people when you should be literally shining that light onto you. And that's what the show helps us do. So if you see yourself in Anu, Sophie, Javen, Katisha, right? You see yourselves in these people, or you behave similar to them. It's a great indication of how you look like. And why you date these kind of people? If you keep dating people like Javen, you should look in it. You know what I mean? So this is why it's a good. These shows are really good and powerful for us to really to begin to learn. So I think my final sentiments on this, because I didn't do a full live on the rest of other people, and I want to a little bit later on, is final sentiments on this is that I think with Javen and Katisha, I can't wait to see the reunion to see more information, right? I get Javen on again. I definitely want to be able to ask a few more questions. I was being very careful because, of course, Netflix at the time, but I'm sure once the reunion is done, he can answer questions fully. I would love to know a bit more about what makes him feel safe. I think that's a really important thing for people. What makes him feel safe, and why he always smiles when he's uncomfortable. I want to know from his perspective, because I think in a lot of scenes we saw, he was smiling, but we could tell he was uncomfortable, right? And it seems to be a go-to as a way of protecting the vulnerability that he carries. That the smile comes up like he's okay, but he's a human being. You know what I mean? Like, you're not okay, and it's okay to be not okay, as Jesse J would actually say. Okay. But look, my time is up. You know, as well, I want to definitely appreciate you guys in the audience as well. Thank you very much. It's appreciated that you guys will be able to join us as well. And we'll be back soon, you know. That's also a very good point, Ari. That's a very good point. Yes, FAs do that when they feel uncomfortable. Yeah, definitely. No word of a lie on that one. As well. But anyway, listen, I will see you again very soon. Much love, much appreciation. Thank you guys who've joined us as well. We will definitely chop it up again. Yeah, I know. That's why I thought I saw the same thing with Damola. I had the top and the bottom, and I said, damn. Okay, I said, damn. Damn. I appreciate you. I know some people are watching it, the interview later. So much love, much appreciation. See you again very, very soon. Much love. Ta-ra.